We good to go?
Yeah, well, it says.
It says? We'll trust it.
I don't know. Normally that little box comes up, doesn't it?
I don't know. I'm in presentation mode. I can't see a thing.
Oh, recording has started. We're good to go.
Okay, there you go. That works for me. All right, so welcome everybody. I know we have a whole bunch on here already. So hey, we're getting ready to come up on OASIS E January 1. Let's just continue the excitement with the coding and hope that going to OASIS is a whole lot smoother than going over to the coding changes. Because at least we'll have some decent guidance here with OASIS E. So what we're going to go through for the next 8 sessions is just the entire OASIS, not just the new E items, but everything. The reason being is that it looks like it's time to get some education back in front of everyone, and because we're going over to a new one, why not just, wipe the slate clean and let's just, boy, scared off already, and just go through everything, soup to nuts here. So we're going to start off with section A. So you're like, what's on earth is a section A? Well, we'll get into that. And a little bit about, because I've been throwing OASIS E stuff at you since what, March, April? So hopefully you have a little idea. This is just all the stuff we're going to go through over the course of the next 8 weeks. So no big deal on the objectives there. Why are we changing to another version? Because of the Impact Act. Anything we ever change, especially with regards to OASIS, is always because of the Impact Act, where we're just following the guidance from Congress that says we have to do all this stuff. And here, going to E is just the next gradual change of becoming part and parcel of this whole Impact Act, which basically is looking for post-acute care, continuum of care data. So it looks like when Mr. Jones goes into the hospital and they record their data, that when he transfers to rehab or to a SNF, to home, to hospice, to outpatient, we're all talking basically the same language. So we compare Mr. Jones across each setting and we can see what Mr. Jones is looking like in his whole episode of care, so to speak. So we have to get that same language because some of our M items don't look like what they do when you work in a SNF or in the hospital. So we're trying to get that common language. And OASIS E has brought in a lot of that common language. So that's all those new items coming to us. How exciting for us. So this is just, in a nutshell, the changes that are happening. We can see the removal of the items, what's being removed, as opposed to all the ones coming in. So yes, once again, it's a little unbalanced. So yes, the OASIS has gotten longer, no doubt about it. I don't think anybody will dispute that fact at all. This is something that I actually have printed this out. I have it hanging from my monitor. We do not know at this point yet how the EMRs are going to be setting up their OASIS. They might have them set up in these sections. They might have them set up like they do right now, which is by systems, which is very similar to the sections. So we just don't know, but we know that this is the guidance manual, how it is set up from A to Q with the sections. And here's where each section, what items, and I'm not going to say the M items anymore because we have more than M items, what items are all included in that particular section. So if you're trying to figure out where on earth do I find my old M1100 because it's not in the very beginning of the OASIS anymore, well, there it is. It's hiding down in section F. So this is just a way to start getting familiar with where things are. I'll just say where they're hiding until we see what the EMRs actually do to us. Yeah, this is just, you'll see little symbols pop up, whatever. So starting off, we always have the all items, which is the patient tracking items. Some of the stuff I'm just going to blow right past because they're really, doesn't take much guidance. The computer fills a lot of this out. So this is just our typical, nothing has changed, right? Patient tracking. The MU30 date we know is the start of care date. It's our date of the first billable visit where there has to be a skilled service. The MU32, the resumption of care date. Right now, anybody can make that first visit on a resumption of care because we already have existing orders to have our butts in there. So anybody can be out there first on a resumption of care. And a lot of times we know that these resumptions of care happen when someone shows up at the house just for a regular visit and the patient says, you know, I was just in the hospital for the last 3 days, and you're like, say what now? You know, no one knew about that. So, and that's okay for that aide to be the first person finding out about that information. But we know then we have to step in and get the right data going. You know, got to get that transfer OASIS in, then we could do that resumption of care. All right, so here's one of our new items that comes up next, A1005, ethnicity. And the question is, are you of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? And has all these answers. And then you also see some new ones on the bottom, new to us for those that have been doing OASIS forever. We actually now have patient unable to respond and patient declines to respond. Now, unable to respond is the code X, and you'll notice within the body of the OASIS now everything is being coded. There's no more responses. Everything is a code. So for those that are also coders, let's just mess with our heads a little bit. So now we have code X for unable to respond. A proxy code, which means information coming from somewhere else. A proxy code or medical record documentation to specify may also be used in addition to this code X. So let's say I am aphasic and I cannot speak or I can't write what my answer is for whatever reason. I am unable to respond. My caregiver can say, hey, she's Cuban, right? So that's okay because I can take a proxy because I am unable to speak for myself here. So someone else, or you can see in the medical record documentation, hey, she's Cuban, right? As opposed to patient declines to respond, which is a code Y, where no other code is permitted. So think of code Y as none your business, right? Not going to answer you. Do not ask anybody else about this. It's none of your business. We are declining to respond. So can't get that information from anywhere else. So even if the proxy, you know, if I'm the caregiver, say, hey, I know my husband's refusing to answer you, but let me tell you, he's Caucasian, right? Doesn't matter. Whatever I say, the patient has declined to respond. Says, nope, not gonna tell you. So again, think of that declines to respond as it's none of your business. Do not be looking elsewhere, as opposed to the unable to respond, like the example at the bottom. We're going to use that code X so we can explain that the patient is unable to respond, but also we're going to put in there that we got from proxy information that the patient is Cuban. Okay. The next item we have is race. And as you can see, there's many choices, none of which we currently have any guidance for. I know in the old D1 or the D manual, we had a lot of different guidance regarding races, but we don't have any just yet. So we're hoping they'll come out eventually on a Q&A or something, you know, you might have to parse some of these. But again, if you look down the list, we run into X and Y again, unable to respond and declining to respond. And then we also have a Z, none of the above, which is okay. So we need more information about that Z category. So let's talk about race. With the race, again, we have the X and the Y, the X unable to respond. And again, we can use proxy information or medical record documentation in addition to that code X. And the Y, again, is none of your business. Stop asking. So again, the example shows the patient has severe dementia with agitation. So this is someone who's going to be unable to respond. The patient's child informs the nurse that the patient is Korean and African American. So we're going to use that X, unable to respond, as well as what else we got from proxy information. So we're going to code all of them. So you want to be sure that you're also accounting for that X but also the information you were able to glean. Okay, so this is going to work. All right, on your phones, go to slido.com. And when it says to enter a password or something to that effect, put in hashtag OASIS E1. All right, so I'm watching April's head. I figure April's, so these are, okay, everyone's popping in there. See, I didn't even know this was going to happen. Oh, cool. This is just everyone joining in. Oh, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. This is a new toy we found at the COSC conference, so this is the first time trying it out. Awesome. So, okay, so we got that going. Somehow I will get to the next slide, 26, 28. Watching the numbers up there, and I can see how many people are on so far, 30. I don't remember how many are on the call, but I know we have at least somewhere around 40.
We have 87 in the meeting.
87. Okay, so I'll let this
Yeah.
number build up before I actually go into the next slide, I guess. This is so exciting. See, now once you're in, you'll stay in, so yay. Oh, this is fun. I also get to see who all is signed in. Oh, Mendy got in. Excellent.
Hey, can you repeat the code, please?
It's OASIS E1, hashtag OASIS, all caps E1. Or slido.com, slido.com.
Jennifer, if to answer your question, Jennifer had a question. So if you get the info from someone other than the patient, you will use X and then whatever they say.
Right, if they were unable to respond. If they're refusing, it's a Y. But if they're unable to respond, it's X and whatever you're either reading from the record or getting from the proxy or, yeah.
I can see an interesting scenario with that when you've got a patient that's got dementia that says, I'm not going to tell you that.
You have to go with it.
I know.
Yeah.
But
All
then
right.
in the back of your mind, you're thinking,
These are
well,
slowing down.
I don't
so
know
let's
that they really
see
know what they're saying.
how to get to the next slide. Here we go. Okay, so we have a question. A proxy is always allowed to respond when the patient is unable to or refuses to. True or false? So just choose your response there. I got to take the timer off of this one. I'll remember that. I think we ran out of time. Oh, well. So, hey, some of you did not get that right. So the correct response is false. Proxy is not allowed to respond when the patient refuses to. So watch those always questions. They're tricky. A proxy is not allowed to respond when the patient refuses to. Well, that's fun.
There was another
Sorry.
question. Does the unable to respond include language barriers?
No. And we'll get to that.
You
Sit
should
on
have a
that question.
translator if you got language
All
barriers.
right, so we actually have a leaderboard going. We'll see how this looks by the end of the day. Okay, so we know MU 150 has not changed. Currently, until we get the final rule that might change this. Right now, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4 for your responses that you have to have an OASIS. Right now, the others don't require one, but that is in the proposed rule to change that by 2025. But we're waiting for the final rule to see if they're going to pull that trigger or not. So just something to keep in the back of your mind that might change. Could be by 2025, everyone will be required to have an OASIS submission. Job security, guys. All right, so A1110, your language. What is your preferred language? Why they did not make this a multiple choice, at least of the more common languages, is beyond me. But so everyone's got to get used to typing in something, English, Spanish, Nicaraguan, whatever their language is. And then the second part of it is do you need or want an interpreter to communicate with a doctor or healthcare staff? So this kind of goes with the question that April was just talking about. You know, what if you have someone that, what was the question? The language? They didn't, I don't even remember your question, April, but it's something about language.
I was
They
just
have-
reading it to you while I was muted. Does the
Okay.
unable to respond include language barriers?
No, because you have to be able to talk to the patient or communicate with the patient in some manner in order to answer the entire OASIS. So you have to have crossed that barrier in order to answer the OASIS items. So, and that this item particularly goes towards that. You know, how are you communicating with the patient? You know, is it in writing? Is it through an interpreter, which might be their family or a hired interpreter? But you have to be able to communicate with the patient in order to complete the OASIS, all of the OASIS. And we can use proxy or medical records appropriate to utilize as needed. So with that interpreter question, it's either, yeah, they want one, no, they don't. Or maybe you do have this unable to determine because maybe you can't communicate with this person. You're looking around going, where's your family member who speaks my language so I can ask you questions? And, you know, this is kind of where you're kind of up a creek right now and you need to find a way to, you know, get a paddle established.
Those are the
Unable to
kind-
determine might be a tough one.
Those are the kind of things that an intake person ought to
Yes.
give the agency a heads up on.
Yes. Okay. We know Mu 80, nothing new there. Mu 90, nothing new there. Just a reminder of, you know, when y'all are reviewing charts, what can affect your Mu 90 date is, of course, you know, if they said on M2001, we just sent that up from your perspective out. If we said, hey, there are medical issue here with their meds and you're waiting for that call back from the physician to resolve that problem, that could affect your Mu 90 date if they don't get you back to you till the next day, right? Could also be waiting for a provider clarification of diagnoses regarding a code change, waiting to confer with therapists regarding M2200 if that's your agency policy to do that. And of course, waiting to confer with the provider for interventions on the plan of care. You know, it's because you're not supposed to be just dropping them a voicemail saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. If you have a problem, get back to me. That is not a legit call from the clinician side. They're supposed to be actually talking to the provider, say, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. Are you okay with that? And then we're going to send you our plan of care. Because you could easily have a provider say, no, I don't want you doing that with that patient. So that's why you have to communicate with them. So all that kind of stuff can affect the Mu 90 date. If you're consulting with another discipline or completing the OASIS over multiple visits, use the latest applicable date within the range. We know start of care, we have 5 days after the start of care date to allow the clinician to use whatever information they can get their hands on. So start of care is day 0, then you have 5 calendar days. So technically you have 6 calendar days that you need to be looking at in the visit notes, like, okay, PT got in there, MSW got in there, whoop, OT, you were too late. I cannot use any information from your eval. I appreciate the input, but can't use it to see if the clinician marked OASIS items correctly. Research is in your days 56 through 60, which is the last 5 days of an episode. And of course, within 48 hours of an inpatient discharge is other information to look at. Transfer and death at home assessments. You want to record the date the agency completes the data collection after learning of the event. And of course, we don't change the Mu 90 date when we're correcting OASIS, you know, in our review jobs. Mu 100, still Mu 100. This is just a grid of the time points and when they're used. You know, it's a good little resource. Nothing special there. Your RFA1, your start of care assessment, and Toby's going to start snoring here. Nothing special there. Just a reminder of, you know, your start of care is your first billable visit. It's a skilled visit. It is day 0. It also starts the 60-day episode of care, which consists of the 2 30-day payment periods for PDGM, right? Because life isn't confusing enough. RFA3 is your resumption of care. So this is the patient resumes care after inpatient stay of 24 hours or longer for reasons other than diagnostic testing. So we know that the resumption of care assessment, the clinician has got to be out there either within 48 hours of discharge following a qualified inpatient stay, or within 48 hours of finding out about that inpatient stay, which happens a lot in home health, or if you actually had a physician order a resumption of care date, they've got to be out there on that date. And we also know that if a restart is planned, but a patient, was in the hospital and they come home, so you're doing a resumption of care, if that resumption of care is falling into that restart window, that days 56 through 60, you do not do a restart, you do a resumption of care and the 485. So to also do a restart is redundant and it's not needed. The resumption of care will act as a restart. So make sure your agencies aren't doing double work or they're completing the correct OASIS when they're in that 5-day window at the end. Now for your restarts, again, they're in days 56 through 60. And this is just advice that, if you have any agencies that are missing the restart window, it happens. People go on vacation, things get missed. Tell your agencies, hey, I appreciate you did a discharge and a new start of care, but that's not what you were supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is this. So again, this is just an informational type of thing. Turn in that late one, throw your mea culpa into the system. You're okay. No one's going to fire you or shoot you for missing that patient. They just say, hey, please don't do that again. A lot of times what agencies will do if they find that they did do this, they missed one, so they're turning in a late one, they'll also show that they have an action plan for making sure this does not happen again. Even though we know it will, at least they have something in there. So if they ever get audited, they'll show, hey, we've got an action plan now so that this doesn't keep happening. Makes everyone happy when they see action plans. Other follow-ups, back in the old days, we call them SCICs, for significant changes in condition. They do require a home visit. This is not a restart. It's not a resumption of care. It looks like a restart, but you're checking off the RFA4 box. And what this might do is indicate a need to update the patient's plan of care because of new orders. So if you find that one of your agencies is turning in, an other follow-up, check to see if there's new orders for anything new that's going on, because that's usually why these are completed. It's like, hey, you know what, my patient just fell and now they're having a lot of serious functional issues. So they're redoing this so that when the next billing claim comes around, it's showing that worse, that I'm going to say not improved, their functional status got worse since the start of care. So it's showing that it happened because now, the HCPCS score is going to change. That HERG level is going to change because this patient is now worse. And anytime you throw a claim in there where someone got worse and Medicare has to pay you more now for this patient, they're going to want to know why. So that's why the RFA5 is completed, to show why that is. So it comes up on that next claim that your patient is not doing all that well anymore. Your RFA6 is your transfers where the patient's not discharged. So that's when the agency is sending their patient off to the hospital and they expect to get them back, right? And that's just the guidance on it, where they're not supposed, the agency is not supposed to be completing these transfer OASIS until that patient has been admitted to the hospital and has been there for 24 hours at least, because they can be admitted and after 6 hours actually be discharged. Say, what, we don't need you after all. We're going to send you back home. Until they've actually been admitted for 24 hours, it doesn't count as an inpatient admission, interestingly enough. So the agency really should be waiting until this patient has been gone, from the home, admitted to the hospital, and been there for at least 24 hours before they even do a transfer OASIS. And that's always exciting to see if they'll wait that long. Same thing with the 7, the transfer 7 is they're not expecting them to come back. RFA 8 is the one that has gotten a whole lot of attention lately because it has picked up new duties. It took a lot of stuff off of RFA 7 and adopted it into 8, and it's all because of the transfer of health information and everything that's happening with OASIS E that this was done. So the RFA 8 now, death at home, is completed now under these circumstances. Obviously, if someone dies at home and, while they've been receiving home health services, before being treated in the emergency department, if they were in the emergency department and passed, we're still going to do an RFA 8. If they were in outpatient surgery or the recovery room after outpatient surgery and they passed, still RFA 8. Before being admitted to an inpatient facility, so they're somewhere tooling around in the hospital, maybe they're in OBS, right, in observation, RFA 8, or they've been in the inpatient facility, they've been admitted there, but it's been less than 24 hours and they died. You know what? That's still an RFA 8 because a transfer OASIS should not have been completed yet until we've passed that 24-hour mark. Woohoo! That's fun stuff. And then, of course, the RFA 9, your discharge. Nothing new with the discharges. And those are just, the guidance on dates. MOO 102, still the same old stuff. MOO 104, nothing new there. Episode timing we know about. Gap calculation. And that's, you're following that from the natural end of a 60-day episode. So even if they got discharged on day 47, we wait until that natural end of the 60-day episode before we count off to see, is there at least a 60-day gap before the next one in order to revert someone to being an early, or are they now a later? So again, nothing new there for us. But here's another new item, transportation, A1250. You'll find that a lot of these, especially in the administrative section, the new ones, all have to do with the social determinants of health. So that's why these are all coming in. And CMS is just trying to get a handle on the population that's being treated to see, that they're being treated fairly across the boards, regardless of their living situation or their ethnicity or, what part of the city they happen to live in. So these social determinants of health is a way of tracking that type of information. So another one is the A1250, the transportation. And the question is, has the lack of transportation kept the patient from medical appointments, meetings, work, or from getting things needed for daily living? And the response is either going to be, yes, it's kept me from medical appointments or getting my meds, or B, it's kept them from non-medical type of things, or C, nope, all good. X, again, unable to respond. Y, declines to respond. So that's really, that's just information that the clinician is going to have to parse out, especially between A and B, if there looks to be any type of issue. But again, C is going to be that no, if you have a spouse and transportation is not an issue. M1000, still nothing new there. M1005, nothing new there. Inpatient discharge dates. Now, this is where we started getting some new stuff mixed in with old stuff. Some of you out here on this call may never see discharges or transfers, but some of you do. So, and of course, anyone, resitting for their credentials, you're going to see this pop up if you're on the Decision Health side for the HCSO. You'll see it pop up on your self-assessment questions. Anyone that chooses to get their credentialing through COSC, obviously the next time you sit for your exam, you're going to be in the E version, so you need to know this anyway. So don't anybody go to sleep on me here. All right, so M2301, emergent care, still there. The item has not changed at all. So this item is asking, of course, at the time of or any time since the most recent start of care resumption care assessment, has the patient utilized a hospital emergency department, including holding or OB status, right? So that's that, nothing new there. 2310, again, nothing new there since they wiped out all our choices. We still have basically just the two medical choices and then other and unknown. 2410, to which inpatient facility has the patient been admitted? Again, nothing special here. 2420, this is where life started getting a little more exciting in the last year. They changed the guidance up on us a little because of, again, going towards this transfer of health information. And they found the best way to make sure everyone's going down the right path is to work the information off of this item. And this is kind of a springboard item. So what we used to call formal and, with or without formal assistive services used to be a whole lot of stuff. So now it's kind of changed. So kind of don't look at that formal assistive services part, or if you do look at formal assistive services, think of formal assistive services only as you're receiving Medicare-based home health care. That's the only thing really that's going to qualify as a formal assistive services. But let's go through this. So code 1, I put in here, this includes basically most of our discharges. The patient is remaining in the community after discharge from your agency, and they might be getting services, but what they're not getting is skilled services from another agency, which is actually a code 2, or they're not getting hospice care from a non-institutional hospice provider, right? They're getting hospice at home, which is our code 3. So that code 2, again, they're receiving services either from another Medicare agency or your agency right now that you're reviewing did a discharge in a new Start of Care OASIS due to a payer source change. So they're continuing on with home health services. They just had a payer source change. So this is the choice you have to take, is choice 2. And again, code 3 is that hospice at home, not in a facility. So let's look at that 1 a little bit closer. So they're discharged to, it could be assisted living, board and care housing, could have any of these community-based services, the ones that we used to call formal assisted services, not any longer. So homemaking, Meals on Wheels, personal care services, paid assistance, anything like that, but they are not getting CMS-based home health assistance or they're getting any assisted services, not including Medicare services. All right. Ooh, Slido. Go back into your Slido. And your patient's been discharged to the community with Meals on Wheels. What is the correct code for M2420? I seriously have to take that timer off of there. Keep that in mind for the next set of decks. No timer. All right. And A is the correct. That is your choice 1. A couple of you just want to go on back and whoever chose 2, read the guidance again, and whoever chose D for choice 4, read that guidance again. Well, we've got some movement in the ranks. Okay. All right. So because of how we answered that question, it leads you to, and I'll go back and show you. All right. So on choice 1, we've got the skip points. If you say that they remain in the community, like we said, the predominant number of discharge, it skips you to 2123, which says the provision of the current reconciled medication list to the patient at discharge, as opposed to 2, where let's say it was either a payer source or they fired the agency they were with and they're going to another agency. Now we're going to be sending that, here's my dog, mailman's here, the medication list to the subsequent provider. All right, so you see they have these skip points, so you're going to send us on our way. Oh, Frankie. All right, so we have for the provider A2120, the provision of the current reconciled medication list at the time of transfer, which is 20, or at 21, it's at the time of discharge. Basically the same question, is just It's going to the subsequent provider. One is at transfer and one is at discharge. And the skip point will send you to the correct place. So it all comes from choosing that correct item at M2410. I gotta close my door, hang on. Hey. Anybody want a Maltese? All right, so you get 2410 correctly, you'll get these provision questions correctly. And we will get into this a little bit more. So again, transfer and discharge. So if we look at the score is 0, the current reconciled medication list was not provided to the subsequent provider, and it sends you on a skip point merrily down the way. Or 1, yep, we sent one to the current provider, and it sends you then to A2122, which is the route. It said, okay, you said you sent the reconciled med list. In what manner did you send that? And that's coming up. Or you could have choice 2 of NA, the agency was not made aware of this transfer timely, which means if you passed that 48-hour window we have to get transfers done, you're not timely anymore. So you would have to take that option. And that option will come up legitimately a lot of times. So again, that 2, the agency wasn't made aware and was therefore unable to provide the patient's current reconciled med list to the subsequent provider. 2121, same things, just at the time of discharge, where you just have the 2 choices of no, we didn't provide 1 or 1, yes, we did. So the question is, well, what if the patient has no meds? Where you have that unicorn that has no meds, right? You would code 1, yes, if the fact that they have no medications is clearly documented and communicated to the subsequent provider. So you have to tell wherever it is they are going to, hey, this patient has no medications. Happy dance. But you have to have told them that. If you did not tell that subsequent provider that there's no meds on board, you would have to answer this as no, we didn't provide that reconciliated list. So this is just kind of an interaction of, MU100, which is saying where are they being transferred to or where are they being discharged to, and which forms will flow in which direction. Because of choices you take, it's going to send you down different paths. The A2123 is now, this is going to the patient. The other ones were about going to the provider. So this is now, all right, if we're giving this information to the patient, and when would we be doing this? We'd be doing this when the patient is being discharged to themselves, right? They're being discharged to the community. They are good to go on their own. So they also need to get a current reconciled med list. So A2123 at the time of discharge goes to the patient. Now you notice there is no med list going to the patient at time of transfer. Why? Because that's going to a provider. You don't get transferred to your own care as a patient when you are transferred. You're getting transferred to someone else's care. Discharging, you could be transferred to your own care. So this is the only time the patient will get their own reconciled med list. So we had the provision of the current reconciled med list to the patient at the time of discharge. And again, did the agency provide that list to the patient, the family, or the caregiver? Could be any of them. And you say, no, a current med list was not provided to any of them. And again, I'll have skip points to get you out of this whole cycle. Or yes, we did provide one, and it'll continue on to, okay, and what was that method that you used? Which we haven't gone over yet, so don't panic. We haven't seen it yet. And again, then I'm just showing lower with the MU100 and the M2420, choosing those options, the discharge from agency, and then you had the discharge 1, which was discharge to the community, or 4, unknown, because they moved somewhere. We don't know where they are, or they're just out of our service range, would lead you to the A2123. To the patient at discharge. And here we have one last Slido coming up. So back into Slido one last time. For the free account, I only get 3 Slidos per presentation, so I'm making the most out of them. Okay, so the patient takes no medications. They decided to go to another agency and no information was transmitted to their provider. What's the correct code for A2121? All right. Pretty good there, pretty good there. You guys are catching pretty quick with my my speed talking here. All right, so the provider was not informed the patient has no meds. They decided to go to another agency, so they're not being transferred to themselves. They're being transferred to another provider, but that idea that they're not taking any medications was not told to the new provider. So they were not informed. So A is the proper choice. A med reconciliation list is still required if there are no meds in order to get proper credit for this item. Yeah, I'm going to win every time because I took this over and over and over again to make sure it worked right. I won't be in the future ones. I don't think I'll get my scores out of there. All right, so we talked about, you know, coming into these, you know, the 21s and 23s and all that, which was the provision of it. You know, did you send a list? So now these questions follow up on that. And again, because of the skip points, hopefully the EMR is going to throw you in the right direction with these. These are asking, what was the method you used to communicate that information? So what was the route? And as you can see, they list several routes here. Electronic health record, health information exchange. Was it verbally, which could be in person, telephone, or video conferencing? You know, did you pull them up on, you know, a chat on the phone or something? Was it paper-based, which includes faxes and copies and printouts, or some other method, which is your texting in your email or via a CD? I don't know anyone that does it anymore. So it is a check all that apply. So if you use several methods, you know, to get this stuff to a patient, you know, email, snail mail, whatever you use, check all that apply. And this is just about how did you send the information to the patient? It's not about, okay, and did the patient look at any of this? We're not responsible for the patient at this point. We're just responsible for getting the information to them. How they choose to open it is their choice. So if you sent it via the portal, but they couldn't figure out how to open the portal, that's their problem. That's not your problem, really. All right. So again, the first one is how did you send the information to the provider when you're doing that transfer? Or the second one is to the patient when you're transferring the patient to their own care. And again, this sheet is just, you know, trying to show these choices made, which items are you going to end up in? These are the different routes, and all this can be found also in the guidance manual, but it is right here in the slide deck, the different routes talking specifically about what they mean when they mean the health information exchange, which we all just call the portal. And again, why did this all come about? Because of the transfer of health information. So this M2420 is really the driver of all of it. If you get M2420 right, you should get everything else just falling in place, lining up correctly. You screw up M2420, you screwed everything up, right? So it just shows on the left is the route you take on discharge for that patient that's just going to their own care. They're being discharged in the community. Versus on the right, response 2 is they're still under the care of an agency, so thus they're still under the care of a provider. And then I just have this, you know, in summary, which, you know, M2420, and I rearranged them a little bit, you know, just crossing things off. They didn't go to another health agency or payer change. Okay. Did they go to a hospice? Nope. Okay. Unknown. They moved away. Nope. Didn't do that. All right. Everyone else just falls into the green box of choice 1. And then it just shows on those different choices which path you should be following down. And finally, the last slide, I know you're all like, yay, the last slide. The last slide I put on there, stolen from Janan. Just showing that some items are self-report only, where we can only, take their information. And you see, that's all those code Ys. You have that code Y, patient declines to respond. It's none of your business. They're not going to answer you. None of your business. As opposed to you choose any other responses where you can take that information from the patient, the family, documentation, wherever it is. So everything in addition to marking off that X. So you have, the clinician make sure that they're marking off the X as well as anything else. If you had that X unable to respond choice coming through with your patient. All righty. I promise in the future, all the others aren't going to be so rushed. There was just a lot of slides in these, and I wanted to make sure we got them done. The other ones should not take as long, is my plan. There was no way to break this up. So I'm gonna stop the slideshow and somehow get back into chat here. See if there's any questions at all. How about patients with surrogates or medical powers of attorney? So if you have someone else that can speak for you, you still have to, the patient, wow, that is a good question. I would think
If they're
that we're still,
cognizant, if they know
that's
what's
going to be
going
the
on,
proxy. If you have a medical power of attorney or you have a surrogate that's answering for you, I think you're still going to be choosing that X, unable to respond, and then take the POA's responses.
but if the patient's cognizant and knows what they want to do there, then they
Well,
will override
yeah, if
that
they're
as long as they
cognizant.
can.
No, I just said if they were unable to respond.
Right.
But if they're able to respond, we don't care what the POA says, because you know what? That's a legal term. All right. Janice, you going to show us your nails?
I'm glad you asked that. I wanted to see him again.
Let me see if I can get him by the camera.
I see it back up right there.
There's the pinky.
All right. Does anybody? They're
tongue.
lovely.
That's my favorite one right there. Pennywise.
Is that it?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? The new items are a whole lot more exciting than the A section. I mean, some of them, they're going to hurt your head a little bit, the mood and behavior ones, but I like the new items. I can't wait to get into the health sections where the new pain items are. That's good stuff. But the section A is just the most, I just think it's clunky. There's just a lot of, get all that early stuff out of the way.
I think it's going to impact more from like a survey perspective, because they're already supposed to be doing discharge summaries and things like that. And there already should be evidence in the chart of how they send that off. So this is just one more layer of a potential ding for not answering it correctly and having the evidence that you answered it correctly. Right. Yeah. So, this will just keep, coming around to you guys. At the end of all of it, I'm trying to find a way to get like an interactive patient-based OASIS exam, from an actual patient, put in there how the clinician responded, and, the exam questions are going to be such that, hey, did the clinician respond correctly? So it's really taking an exam from as you would do your reviewing job. So I'm working on, thanks Pam for that great idea. Appreciate that. So my boss was like, yes, that's a great idea. I'm like, swell. So I'm working on creating that. And that'll be at the end. And that's just something that, it's going to be a requirement to have done, but working on it. I've got 8 weeks to get it working. So I pick at it a little bit every day. Yes, that's right, Pam. Now everyone hates me. Hates you. Yes. But it'll be done in the new Easy LMS platform. So that's actually fun and easy to work through as well. So no, it really is. It's a very good idea. It's just, it's not easy to build. All right. If anyone has any other kind of questions, feel free to, shoot them to me. If you didn't want to pipe up on chat, that's okay. Or if you're still just sitting there going, what the heck was all that? It'll be loaded up also in the Easy LMS system. If anyone can't remember how to get into there, I'm not sure either how to tell you how to do that. I think you just go in, if you don't have your password from when Janan first sent that out, 2 months ago to get in there, you just do the password recovery. You should be able to get in. Way to throw me under the bus like that? Absolutely. Oh, what was that from? Bridesmaids. That was from Bridesmaids.
I think if you just search your inbox for Janan's email and you click the link, when I did it, I was already logged into Easy LMS. I didn't have to put it in, which was good because I didn't know what my password was or anything. So maybe everyone is just set up that way.
I think everybody that we had employed at the time, she put them on, and I think Christina and them are adding new people when they get hired.
Okay, good.
So click your link and see what happens.
Yeah, so we'll get this, figure out how to get that loaded in. I have a call in with Janan tomorrow on some platform questions, so we'll just add this to the list of how to get that recording in there. I know it's pretty simple. I just can't for life of me remember how. Just when I get one system figured out, they come up with another one. But yeah, so did everyone like the Slido? If I get the time stamp off of it so it doesn't, I think it's fun.
Yeah, it breaks it up. I liked it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, cool. All right, well, thanks everyone for bearing with us here, and these will get better as the weeks go on, as get used to the technology and everything. All right.
That's true.
Fun stuff moving forward. Stop recording. Yes.
Oh, what? Let me do it. Let me do it. Yes, it's done.
Yay.